Hello everyone, and welcome to the second part of my lecture on Sula by Toni Morrison. Here we turn to the train scene, one that is perhaps familiar to us now, having read and discussed the Jim Crow train car in Mary Church Terrell's unpublished short story, Betsy's Borrowed Baby. In this scene, Helene has a conversation with the white conductor who immediately shames her for having been in the wrong space. She tries to be as courteous as possible, telling the conductor, "We made a mistake, sir. You see, there wasn't no sign. We just got in the wrong car, sir. We just got in the wrong car. That's all, sir. We don't allow no mistakes on this train. Now get your butt on in there." He stood there staring at her until she realized he wanted her to move aside. Pulling Nell by the arm, she pressed herself and her daughter into the foot of space in front of the wooden seat. Then, for no earthly reason, at least no reason that anybody could understand, certainly no reason Nell understood then or later, smiled. Like a street pup that wags its tail at the very door jamb of the butcher shop he has been kicked away from only moments before, Helene smiled dazzlingly and coquettishly at the salmon-colored face of the conductor. So in this moment, we might want to consider, why is she smiling? Because that is the thought that emerges for Nell, especially with the use of free and direct discourse. Then, for no earthly reason, at least no reason that anybody could understand, certainly no reason Nell understood then or later. So that extended moment of thought, that is a moment of Nell wondering why on earth her mother would smile at this white man who's just been so rude to her. And not only that, as the scene continues, we also see the shame of black soldiers who witness her smiling, trying to please the man who's insulted her so. We also might think about here the use of simile. If you could spot it, I'd be happy to see you comment on how simile helps us further understand the imagery and the feeling of this scene. Another question we might consider: how does Nell and Helene's travel scene compare to Betsy's? What do we learn further about the Jim Crow car? Or perhaps about the significance and the meaning of black travel during this time period? Mary Church Terrell writes about it in her own moment. But Toni Morrison, a contemporary author writing in 1970s, returns to this time period and offers a different kind of perspective. Another way of putting this is, even though both of these scenes take place during the Jim Crow era and focus on the Jim Crow train car, what makes Toni Morrison's work more contemporary or distinct from the kind of work that Mary Church Terrell is writing about in her own moment? After they attend her grandmother's funeral, Helene takes her daughter back to town, and Nell feels changed by that travel. Late that night, after the fire was made, the cold supper eaten, the surface dust removed, Nell lay in bed, thinking of her trip. She remembered clearly the urine running down her leg and into her stocking until she learned how to squat pertly, the disgust on the face of a dead woman, and the sound of funeral drums. It had been an exhilarating trip, but a fearful one. She had been frightened of the soldiers' eyes on the train, the black wreath on the door, the custard pudding she believed lurked under her mother's dress, the feel of unknown streets and unknown people. But she had gone on a real trip, and now she was different. She got out of bed, lit the lamp to look in the mirror. There was her face, plain brown eyes, 3 braids, and the nose her mother hated. She looked for a long time, and suddenly a shiver ran through her. "I'm me," she whispered. Me. What does Nell mean when she says, "I am me"? What do the events on the train and Nell's declaration tell us about her coming of age? What has she grown into? What has she claimed through travel? Another way of thinking about this is to even consider, how does travel change each of us in our own lives, especially at a young age? And then we also have to contend with the fact that Nell never goes anywhere else for the rest of her life. Does that mean she lost what she gained on this journey, or something else? You can think about this and more in your comment replies, considering what does Nell mean when she says, I am me? In the previous section, I posed the question, what does it mean when Nell says, I am me after her travels? I framed it as a question about coming of age and how travel can change people. But we also might think about this as our entry into thinking about Black girlhood studies, a more recent development in Black feminist and Black studies. Black girlhood studies thinks about how race, that is Blackness, gender, that is being a girl, and childhood all come together. It is intersectional and poses a number of questions for us. As one scholar writes, Black girlhood studies introduces theoretically rich ways to analyze the history of childhood and youth, from discussions of their representation in the archive, so that would be, for example, in stories like Betsy's Borrowed Baby, or even in our novel Sula, or even in spaces like Black Twitter. These are all archives, places that house documents and discourses and representation. So again, from discussions of their representation in the archive to assumptions about race and age. Finally, Black girlhood studies has the potential to reach the public in meaningful and accessible ways. And down here we have the link that will also feature in this post or outside this video so that you can also access it. But continuing on Black girlhood studies, as the author writes, these issues are contemporary and relevant efforts to reclaim the significance and beauty of Black childhood, have been powerfully articulated through movements and hashtags of hashtag Black Girl Magic, hashtag Black Boy Joy, and hashtag Hair Love. These trends demonstrate that Black childhood and girlhood is still under siege, but also fiercely defended. The field is undergoing an incredible moment of transformation and influence, of which scholars of American history, and I would add American literature, should take note and contribute. So I'm inviting you all to think about Black girlhood in Sula, particularly further scenes related to getting the attentions of older men, but also fighting off different threats. So when Nell and Sula go into town, the older men recognize that they are entering puberty in this moment where they refer to them as pig meat. Pig meat is ambiguous but also evocative, and it'll be interesting to consider, why do you think this word is used to describe the girls? What does it evoke? What emotions, what ideas, what connotations or associations come with the word pig meat? Then we have another scene in which Sula cuts off the tip of her finger to scare off the white boys who threaten or bully the young girls when they walk through town. Morrison writes, her aim was determined but inaccurate. She slashed off only the tip of her finger. The four boys stared open-mouthed at the wound in the scrap of flesh, like a button mushroom curling in the cherry blood that ran down into the corners of the slate. In this scene again, Sula has harmed herself and dared the boys to take her on as a way to protect her and Nell and ensure that the boys never bully her again. She goes so far, and yet it's effective. And so we have to consider, how is this a part of girlhood? What does this tell us about race, gender, and childhood that we may not otherwise attend to? This is the end of my video lecture. Again, I'm asking you all to think about Black girlhood in Sula, travel in Sula in this second video, and then of course, provide at least one comment reply in the blog post. Thank you.